At times, life can provide us with some very challenging moments. For some, adversity can inspire artistic creation. As it turns out, we may have some control over how we respond to these situations. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Music Student 101. Here are your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips.
All right, we are back.
We are back.
Oh man, it was so good to hear Mike's voice the other day, our announcer.
Mike's soothing, dulcet tones, yes.
Yeah, our good announcer, Mike Cunliffe, we really haven't had down here since the beginning of this epidemic. So,
yeah.
It's been over a half a year now, so.
Wow.
Welcome back, Mike.
Yeah, remember 500 years ago when we had an announcer? Yeah, he's back.
Yeah, right. And I think that's a good sign, don't you?
Yes.
Hey, Matt.
What's up, man?
This is kind of normally where we'd catch up, and there'll be time for that later on, right?
Sure.
First of all, I do want to say a couple of little things. We will hold off on the remaining couple of listener compositions from the last episode. We still had a couple left.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to move those on to episode 100 or 101, whichever.
Which is not that far away, actually.
It is not. It is not. And I don't know if I want to do like a fun thing for episode 100, or just keep our every 10 episodes for listener compositions, but we'll figure that out. We got time for that.
Yep.
So anyways, composers, know that you have not been overlooked, and
no,
we hadn't forgotten about that. Also, they're awesome. They're just awesome pieces of music. So
we've been listening to them.
We have a lot, yeah, driving around, stuff like that. So.
Yeah, why put them on while we're doing work and stuff, yes.
And we already know them better now. So rest assured that we'll also get back into theory very soon.
Can't wait. Everybody knows theory is my happy place. So.
Yeah, man. Nancy Chase, I haven't forgotten about that Foreman analysis episode. And as Matt has witnessed, I am still working on that sonata.
If you use the term working generously, then yes, Jeremy is still working on the sonata. I'm using my air quotes. He's still working on the sonata.
I'm kind of idling my way through the sonata a bit. In all fairness, hey, I don't know if you've heard my revisions, but just know. Hey, and another
yeah.
I'm gonna get more into that when I'm talking about my sob story.
Yeah,
we'll get more into that.
This is good composer advice, by the way. Composers, songwriters out there, whenever anybody asks you how is that piece coming, you are practically finished.
Oh, really?
That is the answer to that question. It's practically done, practically finished. One or two more sit downs with it, and it'll be ready to go. Yeah, I don't care if you haven't even started the thing yet. That is the answer to that question.
So
how is that coming along? It is practically finished. Practically finished.
Just 5 more sit downs. 5 or 6 more sit downs. Well,
anyway,
what brings us here today is the fact that we're all familiar with the little bug that's been kind of stifling the flow of this planet here, right? It's been stepping on our groove.
Is there a bug going around? I hadn't heard.
Well, those of you listening in 2030 will probably
Maybe
still know what we're talking. You might still know what we're talking about.
You probably still know.
But still, from mid-March of this year, 2020, to the day of this recording, Wednesday, October 23rd, 2020, it's been suggested that we all practice a number of social distancing guidelines due to the rampant spread of the COVID-19 virus.
And we have been doing our best to practice those. At least Jeremy and I have.
Certainly.
It's made things challenging. To be sure, it's made things with the podcast challenging.
Indeed,
to say nothing of just everything else we do.
Right.
But we're learning as we go. Right? We're getting a little better at this. We only have about 45 minutes worth of technical difficulties before we actually start recording the podcast these days, as opposed to like an hour and a half up to forget it. Let's just try again tomorrow.
You're right.
Which has happened.
And as you say that, Matt, your voice kind of went underwater a little bit.
Case in point.
Yeah. But I think they heard what you said. I'm not going to ask you to repeat that.
Okay.
Just know that we do have technical difficulties. I don't know why this thing wants to record 32-bit audio, but anyway, we'll get back into that. But anyway, as a result of this whole thing, as there's been restrictions put on the ability of a bar or a public house or a club to do what they do best, right? Which is entertain the public with drink and music, right?
Right. It's just frankly not a good idea right now, from a health perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I ran into my friend Jason Brunson the other day. You remember Jason? Bartender, bar owner at one time, and now bartender. And he was kind of lamenting about the 11 o'clock mandate, which I didn't want to go out and say it, but to me, it kind of makes sense, right? Because people get more drunk later in the night. They also talk louder because they're, I don't know, it has something to do with high frequencies that get kind of drowned a bit,
Yeah, sure.
But also, and when they talk louder, they move more air, and they also least likely to wear masks and start kissing each other.
Yeah, and just inhibitions and good judgment is a little dulled in that state, as we're all well aware. So,
well, one result of all of that has been that the musicians who counted on that income are now left more or less high and dry, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at first and now a bit, we could see a lot of them attempting to adapt immediately via video performance and GoFundMe efforts. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's been hard for GoFundMe and video performances to take the place of live performance, right?
Right. And for those of you listening in 2030, GoFundMe is a thing where you request money from your peers and friends, and they actually help you accomplish amazing things via outreach on social media.
we're very much recording for posterity these days. Is it posterity? Posterity?
I think it's posterity.
Okay.
I don't use that a lot because I'm not sure.
Me neither, obviously.
We kind of know about music, but other things.
Yeah,
not so much.
that's about it.
But hey, this is kind of optimistic, by the way. People in 2030. That means we intend to have this thing going for at least another 10 years, right?
Well, let's hope so.
But anyways, on top of all that, here in the States, we have a presidential election coming up soon in a couple of weeks. And suffice it to say that things are getting a bit tense over here. Anxiety is running amok. The divisions between left and right-wing ideologies have never been more pronounced in my mind. Whichever side you're on, I'm sure you can agree that you've lost a friend or two over this, and some of you may have lost a friend or two because of the epidemic. And our heart goes out to all of you.
Yeah, these are tough times we're living in.
And finally, one result of all of this could obviously be a lapse in creativity.
Which is what we were going to be talking about today, right?
Yes, I've experienced this personally. Many of my musician friends, especially on the gigging ones, they have, and also many of our listeners who I've talked to have been experiencing some problems and actually some successes.
Yeah, well, I think the idea for this episode, if I remember correctly, came from something I said, actually, just sort of in passing at some point, which is like, and it was true, I haven't composed anything in months.
Uh-huh.
Whatever you want to call it, just haven't had inspiration. I mean, I've thought about it. I've thought about coming and sitting, but then I think, what am I even going to put down? I have like zero ideas, which is a very uncomfortable mental state for me personally. This is not something that is normal for me to just have no idea. I at least usually have 3 or 4 ideas of something I could do, something I could write, To just have zero ideas is almost like a part of my brain has shut off, and it's weird, and it made us, I guess, sort of wonder how other people were handling all of these tough times. And okay, this isn't necessarily a music theory topic, and we are going to definitely get back into music theory topics. We have not forgotten music theory Trust
Oh.
me, I never forget.
I'm sure we'll start losing people if we don't, man. We got to do it for sure, you know. And I
We've
don't
gotta
wanna
do it.
I want to do it.
And we want to do it. Music theory is the bread and butter of our podcast here. But just if we want to take one last time to
Mhm.
sort of address what's going on, and sort of, I don't know, be a soundboard so you can get a sense of how other musicians are doing and how other musicians are dealing with it, and have a little bit of a dialogue go on just about this time that we're living in, which is so scary and so unprecedented and so difficult on creative people, and so difficult on people like musicians who depend on a certain, call it a gig economy or whatever to make their living.
Absolutely. If not just the creative outlet, and if not just the social entertainment outlet, which is one of my favorite things about music, right? Being on a stage and performing and moving people with my music one way or the other, especially as a bass player, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, which is one thing that is definitely a loss, that sense of emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
To say nothing, like you were saying, of the actual money loss, the financial loss when you can't, and other people are dealing with this too. Servers and bartenders and other people who are supported by this this section of the economy are suffering too.
Right.
In that way, and it's hard. It's very hard.
Well, today we're going to hear some of their experiences, some of our experiences, and maybe add a silver lining to all of this, because it turns out that, like many of our listeners, creative types can use times of hardship to channel their creativity.
Mm-hmm.
They can also use their creative outlets to reckon with these hardships.
Yes.
So in this episode, we will share some of our own experiences, and we'll hear from some of our listeners, and we'll also discuss a couple of articles that I found on the subject of creativity in times of difficulty. But first, here's a couple of cool, fun things, interesting things. Yesterday, I was listening to NPR. NPR One has just all these, they'll do a national newscast every hour, and then just have all these cool little podcasts and special interest snippets and stories. And
real quickly, NPR for our international listeners is National Public Radio. That is the government-run broadcast network for the United States.
Right. Yeah, I guess I should point that out. But there was a story on how high school bands are adapting to this whole thing, because we have wind players and singers who move a lot of air when they do what they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's some high schools, I can't remember where the locations were, but they were saying some of the solutions they were doing was they would have their band performances outdoors and actually having 14 feet of social distancing between the students.
to compensate for the extra wind. And
doesn't that kind of spread out the overall sound as well? Wouldn't that be you see a marching band, everyone's kind of clumped in together.
It's not ideal. It's not ideal.
So you think that it's probably better if they're standing tighter together, and if they're spread out, it's not like amplify. It's not going to amplify it more, but it's going to be like it'll spread out the textures somehow, right?
Well, it depends. I mean, 4 or 5 trumpets are pretty darn loud. At some point it would start to spread the texture out. I don't know about, I think 14 feet. I think the most what it would probably do is, the trumpets, you can still pretty much hear okay. The tubas, you can still pretty much hear okay. The clarinets are probably a little bit lost in the, in the din a little, is what I would imagine, and I haven't run any experiments on this.
No. I don't think a lot of people have, other than the people trying to pull this off. But anyways, that's a side note. And they also use furnace filters to put like on the ends of their bells and stuff like that.
I've seen special made like bell masks.
With slits in it, like you can get your mouth in there, and I imagine it kind of closes over your mouth when you're not actually playing the instrument.
Right, yeah. And then I've seen actual masks for the end of the instrument too, like to slip over the bell of the instrument.
Okay.
A professor at one of the colleges I teach, that he ordered a whole bunch of those for his trumpet players, and so,
Well,
yeah.
Now, the next discussion coming up is wintertime. So they're talking about maybe just moving to percussion ensembles and stay indoors during the wintertime. I mean, they're going to try it and see how it goes, but in some of those northern states, I bet it's mighty cold.
Tough. Yeah.
Not to mention these instruments can be kind of sensitive to temperatures fluctuations.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Moving on, I just thought that was cool, a fun little thing to hear how people are. We're always adapting, right? We got to adapt. You got to do what you can do to survive. That's just part of survival.
Oh yeah.
On the same network, I heard a cool story about an organization called Hungry for Music. Have you heard of this, Matt?
Mm-mm.
In the past 25 years, they have delivered more than 14,000 instruments to 49 states and over 30 countries. And these are just people collecting up used instruments that people don't want anymore and
That's great.
distributing to people who actually need them and want them, often students and organizations for young people who are wanting to know more about music and learn how to play. So
That's awesome.
they're still going strong during this pandemic, and this is when they kind of need you the most. So if you have some instruments that you might be bored with, or you got a new cool guitar and you're tired of that little clunker, so you can send it into Hungry for Music, the organization. Okay, moving on, shall we?
Yes.
One more fun little thing before we get into the new review. We got a new listener, a new Patreon patron who's got some good news for us. When we did our episode on intervals and interval recognition, we didn't really have a good one for the major third, right? We just said, it's just a third in the scale, and you sing, da, 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 da. I can't remember exactly what we said, but he actually had a pretty good one, which was the doorbell chime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a downward major third. Yeah, that is a good one.
So this is just a major third, D major, F sharp to T, 3 to 1. So that's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whenever you hear that, and another cool thing about it is it's actually inverted, or it's like you're starting on the higher part.
Right.
Most of the examples we came with, we would start off with the 1 and then move up to the...
And move up. Yeah, we didn't really go on downward face intervals a whole lot.
So now when you hear ba ba, you got to challenge yourself in your head to flip it to ba ba. You know what I mean?
Which is not as hard as it sounds.
It was for me at first. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie.
Just always think bottom to top.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and there's also Westminster Chimes, another bell-based melody. Let's see. I think I had that earlier. 3 1 2 5 5 2 3 1. Or you could solfege it.
Yeah, just different systems.
Mm-hmm. So thanks again for that, Sam Deutsch out of Kingwood, Texas. And we will learn more about Sam later on. It is now time to share a new review.
Yay, new reviews.
And we have so many fun facts. I got a fun fact before we even get into this review about another review. Do you remember last episode where we had a reviewer from FLHAGHHJ out of Florida? Maybe out of Florida, I don't know. But those are the people that mentioned you misspeaking about the Lydian mode.
Okay.
Remember that?
Right. Yeah, vaguely.
Well, they changed that review to where it says, sorry, guys, I didn't think about the way that would look. Keep up the great work. So they actually went back and fixed their review. I guess they heard our episode when we talked about that. FLHAGHHJ. Send us an email. We want to get to know you. Email us
absolutely.
info@musicstudent101.com. We want to get to know you, and we want to thank you for your review and for taking the attention.
Yes, absolutely.
That's just
and for pointing out our misspeaking.
We need that, man.
About the Lydian mode. I'm not sure what what did I say again?
It was, I think that we were talking about the Locrian mode, and then somehow Lydian came up, and I think you said that Lydian did not have a perfect fifth.
Yeah, then that's wrong. It does.
Whereas the Locrian doesn't have a perfect
fifth.
fifth.
It's Locrian that doesn't. Yeah, okay, all right, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, even I'm wrong sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Or just autopilot, as I call it.
Right.
Okay, man. Well, let's get into this new review. We have 5 stars from April Grateful.
Yay!
April Grateful. April
love it.
says, Jeremy and Matthew are two brainy, witty guys who productively banter their way through all aspects of music theory.
Productively banter.
We got ourselves another wordsmith.
Yes, I'm going to remember that phrase.
Productively banter. I have studied and love theory, but I have learned so much from this podcast. Their style is so approachable, and I love their humor. Keep it going, please. Thank you.
We are certainly trying.
We will, yeah.
And thank you for that review.
And I wonder if April Grateful is just a grateful person in general, or a Grateful Dead fan, or both.
Or that's her actual last name. It could actually be the actual last name.
Now that would be the coolest.
Yeah.
Of all of those.
Yeah.
Scenarios.
Send us an email, April, and ask and let us know.
Yeah, right.
We are curious.
So we appreciate that. Again, the new reviews help us out a great deal. They boost our presence and spread the word and get more people to music theory and ear training and just music knowledge. Right?
Indeed.
And we also want to take this moment to thank a new Patreon patron.
Wow. Yay.
Yeah, man. Matthias Horn is out of Germany, and he found us on Spotify.
Excellent.
Would you like to share what Matthias has to say?
Absolutely, I would. So Matthias says, "Thank you for your great podcast. Every Saturday, I do some cleaning work at home, and that's time for a couple of new series from you. I'm always inspired from your superb work." Well, thank you, Matthias. We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Although it is hard to get this stuff from my head into my fingers and back again. Don't I know it?
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot more now, but how to get this applied? Should I continue?
Well, unless you have some thoughts on how to apply that.
How to apply? So
other than repetition, I don't have much.
Yeah, hard to get the stuff from my head and my fingers back, and I know a lot more now. But how do I get this applied? For me, and I don't know if this is the best advice in the world, or if other people would agree or not. For me, the secret has always been don't force it.
Mm-hmm.
The more it feels to me like the more I have tried to take theory knowledge and say, okay, now I have theory knowledge and now I'm going to put this into my playing, or put this theory knowledge into my composition. The more I have tried to do that intentionally, the less it has worked. Right. I feel like for me, what has always been a better situation has been that I am going to learn theory while playing and writing music, and because these two things happen in the same brain, they are going to mix on their own eventually. And as I get more comfortable with theory, I start to see the ways that the theory can be applied in my music. As I get more comfortable playing music, I begin to see, opportunities to apply a little theory, right? And the thing that has worked the least for me is to say, okay, now here's this theory concept. Now, how do I play that, right? That's probably my advice. In short of, you can also, if you learn, depending on what theory concept exactly you're talking about, you can create exercises to or drills or something of your own to play on your instrument. You can drill diminished chord arpeggiations up and down, and you can do things like that to get these concepts under your fingers. But to me, for me, in my experience, the thing that has worked the least is for me to say, okay, let's create a German augmented 6 of 5 and have that function in this piece of music I'm writing, or let's play that in this. No, guys. See, this is the chord we're going to, that is what has not worked. What has worked more is just learn theory, learn to play, let them come together, and be part of your voice.
Haha. Okay. I'm gonna come back to that on my sob story because my process is a little bit different.
Well, like I said, I think everybody's process is a little bit different, but yeah.
But that makes sense what you're saying. I dig it. So also, like I said, what I've been doing is reaching out to listeners and asking them how they've been doing with the pandemic. And me and Matthias touched on that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he says this year is different because of the pandemic. Yeah, it certainly is.
Mm-hmm.
I play keys in a church worship band, but we couldn't meet much so far. And I started playing guitar last December because a colleague inspired me for that really fascinating instrument. We used to use our lunch break to play together and to have a jam session. This is not possible anymore, and this is what I miss a lot. Strange thing is that I didn't have much more time for practicing. I worked at home as an IT employee, but the workload was sometimes higher than before the pandemic. This is something to which I can personally relate, actually. But I'm happy as long as I'm healthy. So my little obstacles are nothing compared to people who were suffering because of the pandemic, which
Right.
Matthias's gratitude is something we could all learn from.
Right.
Especially myself, because like I say, I can relate to this too. My job, actually, it feels like there is more work involved in doing it the way I do now.
Uh-huh.
For various reasons, great and small, technology hiccups and things that I used to could do, just while I was standing in front of people in class. I have to kind of do on my own time now, and it feels like it's actually more work than it used to be to do it through this. So yeah, I can absolutely relate to that.
Oh, and that's been the case with this podcast, because we can normally just sit down, plug in your mic, my mic, and the keyboard, and hit play, record. I'm sorry. And that would be that. Now we got to do all this stuff where your files go to this folder, and I got to get them over here and line them up and sync them and all that stuff. And
I mean, after 85 episodes or 89 episodes, whatever it was, we had a fairly smooth routine for how we would come in, record the podcast.
We were raging, dude. We were raging.
Yeah, we kind of had the routine on lock there. We could get through it very efficiently, and it all of that fell apart, and with my teaching too, I had a fairly consistent, I had gotten pretty good at the routines and at the in and outs of my daily teaching habits, and a lot of that just fell apart.
Yeah.
And a colleague of mine who is a grad student now, but also teaches grade school as part of her graduate work. She and I were discussing a couple of weeks ago about how it feels like when you take the one-on-one aspect out of teaching, and take away that that connection that you make with students and things, it feels like what you're left with is really just a bunch of work. You have really taken away the main reason teaching was fun. The main thing that you enjoyed about what you did, all of that is gone, and what you're left with is just the mountain of work.
The engagement, the interaction.
Right. Yeah. And maybe that even other musicians feel that way. You're talking about missing that interaction, engagement in live music, And it's like, well, you can do videos and put them online, but when you're missing that actual engagement, that's just work, right? That's just something you have to sit down and do.
Yeah,
so
it's not as immediately rewarding. Not that we do this for ourselves, obviously. Well, maybe we do a little bit.
I mean, it's rewarding. I mean, we wouldn't.
Thanks again, Matthias, for your Patreon.
Thank you, Matthias. Yes, and thank you for your Patreon support. You can support us on Patreon too, dear listeners. That website is patreon.com/musicstudent101.
Yep, you got it.
Yes, go there. You get cool stuff, right?
Yes, you do. And we'll figure out that. I don't want to be too specific now because I'm running very low on mugs. And,
well, that's a good problem to have.
But the good news is I've reached out to everyone who I owe a mug, and I have all their addresses, and we got that enough to cover them. And that's going to be my focus. But we'll also get back into the mini episodes as well. Yeah. We've definitely been slacking on those. And we've actually lost a couple of Patreon patrons. They can go in and hit these little exit surveys and tell us why they left, And 80% of the reason has been financial. You know, their financial situation has changed due to COVID. But the two of the people have left saying that the activity has slowed down more than they had hoped. So I totally understand that. You know.
Yeah.
The remaining patrons, just please bear with us and know that you're on our brain. And we'll get to these mini episodes. Anyway, well, hey, that's kind of you kind of touched on how this has affected your professional career and your work. But how about your psyche, Matt? How's this affected your overall state of being?
My overall state of being.
It's
Well,
been over a half year now, right? It's been over a half year, and I think that's plenty of time to judge how we can handle these things, right?
Yeah, it's been about 7 or 8 months, depending on when you rank the start of everything. You know, I was never one of these people who is just climbing the walls to get out of my house.
Right.
I'm a bit of an introvert,
Right.
and I'm really super okay just hanging out of the house. That hasn't been really that mentally debilitating. I think the hardest part for my mental state of being has just been the general anxiety, you know, worrying about the health of myself, worrying about the health of the people I care about, you know, worrying about when all of this is going to be over. You know, I think that has been, you know, it's sort of been the biggest hit to my mental well-being. You know?
Yeah, man.
It's not so much the getting out of the house. I really don't, you know, I really don't feel the need to get out of the house all that much. And I may be in a minority on that because I know a lot of other people are going crazy. But
you are, and I am. I'm right there with you though, because I mean, I put out a good front. Like when I'm around people, I get, you know, I give it my all, and I'm really. You would think I'm an extrovert, but I'm kind of the same. I like being inside my house.
Yeah.
I don't really go out as much as I used to, anyways. But
yeah, I like my little cave in my basement, you know, where I can, you know, I can hang out and be myself. I like that. I mean, it would be nice if I could get out more, I suppose, but I don't really, you know, just feel like I'm going insane staring at the same four walls, you know. Of course, you know, a lot of that is I have plenty to do. You know, I've got a workload. I'm still at my job, you know, and I'm grateful for that. You know, a lot of people don't have that luxury, but you know, part of that is I still have plenty to do.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's not so much the case with me because work just kind of comes when it does, and in the meantime, I'm just sitting around, and I could be accomplishing a lot more. You have anything else to say, or shall I get into my sob story?
Go ahead.
Well, at first I went into survival mode. I think like many of us did. I kind of really put down my instruments and kind of focused on the problem at hand for the first few weeks, maybe even months. But I didn't really abandon music entirely. You know, I still play with my couple of bands. Jasper Cole actually has not done anything. One of our members had heart problems a while ago, so he's locking it down hardcore.
Oh, yeah.
But my other band, this little cover band I'm working with, we get together at least once every week or so. And so that's kept me pretty well in music. I just don't sit around like I used to playing music, you know? I'm still listening to my audiobooks. I've been listening to The Story of Music from Babylon to the Beatles, How Music Has Shaped Civilization by Howard Goodall. Love that guy.
Very nice.
How Music Works by David Byrne. And I still need to get back into Musicophilia by Oliver Sacks, who recently passed away.
Yeah, David Byrne. Is that the Talking Heads guy?
That is the Talking Heads guy. And he actually touches on much more than just music and how it affects people. He talks about different cool things I never thought of, like how the venue kind of paints the music, right? You know, how certain venues attract certain bands and so forth. I can't really do it justice what he's talking about, but he also gets into the music business, which is a very cool thing to learn about, and how it's changed over time, and how social, I guess, these streaming services and things like that have kind of challenged the music industry, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually some good insights on how to navigate that world these days. So the interest in music has been still there, but again, I just kind of what? Okay, so let's get into this sonata here. Is that the thing I said I'd come back to?
Jeremy's homework assignment from like 2 months ago.
So I started working on it on my laptop within MuseScore. So I just had kind of like a little piano grand staff, left hand, right hand kind of thing going on, and really got a good ways through it, and really started really digging what I was doing. And then I wanted to come down and start putting it down on my computer where I could have it in MIDI and actually start mixing it, making it something nicer and something I enjoy more. And I came down here, started up my computer, and the mouse, for some reason, was like had this drag to it. And it took me like 2 weeks and several phone calls to Apple to get this thing sorted out, and finally got this sorted out. And I said, you know what? This is the perfect time to go ahead and paint these walls down here and take down this drop ceiling and get my studio to where I really feel like I want to be down here, right? Because it's kind of dark, and now I've lightened it up, added some more illumination, and I did take down the drop ceiling. But I feel like I've been doing all these things just to kind of avoid getting back to what I need to be doing as an artist. You know what I mean?
Literally painting walls to avoid writing a sonata.
Yes. But hey, dude, I'm sorry I keep on calling you dude. Some guy called us.
Okay.
One of our listeners called us the Bill and Ted of. I need to get back of music theory. I don't have the person's name on hand right now, but if that is the case,
no way.
I like to think that they mean we'll change the world with our music, you know. But if it means
I don't think that's what they mean.
Alex, you can be Rufus. I'll accept both Bill and Ted. You're more of the Rufus, I think.
I was gonna ask, am I Bill and you Ted, or are you Bill and I'm Ted, or I don't even know which is the Keanu Reeves one. I don't even know.
Keanu is Ted Theodore Logan.
Ted Theodore, right? Exactly, yeah. Bill S. Preston Esquire and Ted Theodore. Yeah, okay.
But anyways, just a fun little thing.
The Bill and Ted of music theory. I love that.
What was I saying?
That's not inaccurate.
No. Dude, what was I saying?
Dude. Well.
Oh, anyways, all that to say, I have no excuse at this point. My studio is actually looking now. I have a lot of rearranging to do, but all the hard work is done, and I think I'm ready to start getting into that sonata, because that's going to be the next theory episode. And if the next theory episode is not Form Analysis Part 3, then you know that I'm still struggling with that sonata, but we'll get more theory to you either way.
Eventually we're just going to fail Jeremy and do the podcast anyway.
Well, at one point you said
Jeremy will get an F on his sonata homework, and
at one point you said, "Do you want me to just go ahead and write the sonata?" I was like, "Oh, geez, man, I'm already like 3/4. What was it?
Like I'm almost done now.
I'm so close to finishing it, right?" Anyways, so I think that concludes my sob story.
Yeah. So are we done with Jeremy's sob story at this point?
I think so. And you know, like I said, things are starting to feel, I'm getting more excited about music now. I'm actually picked up my bass the other day and started playing along with some stuff, and I think it's coming back. I hope
Excellent.
It's coming back. Yeah. But it did go away for a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's you and there's me, and now let's hear from a few of our listeners and see what's been going on with them.
Let's do that.
Let's talk about our friend Trey. Trey is a drummer, first off, who has recently picked up baritone ukulele because he wanted to explore harmony and melody a bit more. Now, Matt, I texted you this the other day. I don't know if you got it, but Trey came up with probably the most crass and thusly the most memorable mnemonic devices.
I did get that.
And we will not share that, but just suffice it to say that it involves some of the more heavy-hitting explicitives that begin with any of those 7 letters. The F word, C word. That thing where you call down the Almighty to subject one to eternal hell. That word. I'll leave it to your imaginations, but I know that I will always remember that mnemonic device for the order of sharps. The one that we so innocently named as Fat Charlie Goes Down and Eats Breakfast, right?
Right. Oh, man, back in like episode 1.
Yeah. But thanks for sharing that, Trey. I think the main point was the more outlandish or ridiculous the mnemonic device, the more memorable, and therefore the more helpful. Anyway, what does Trey have to say about how this has all affected him?
Well, Trey says, the COVID risk kept me from laying down the drums for a long time. but I am starting to work with BandLab. I'm hoping to send a ukulele track or two to my trombonist slash bassist slash tenor uke playing cousin to jam to.
Sounds like a talented fella.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm not creating a lot right now because I'm trying to focus on getting to where I can read proficiently, a lifelong pursuit. But I am learning a slew of songs from Jonathan Colton, The Magnetic Fields, and Taylor Swift. I just find many of the songs from these artists to be amazingly fun to sing to, so I simply had to get to where I could play them for myself. I'm also playing around with ideas I pick up when listening to your podcast and to the Strong Songs podcast, which he highly recommends. And I'm finding that just knowing the circle of fifths and a few common cadences has taken a massive amount of guesswork out of composing riffs. That encourages me to dig deeper and learn more. The circle of fifths. If you can ever, it is fundamental.
The power of
Really
understanding the circle of fifths.
Really, the interval of the fifth is fundamental to the understanding of Western music theory, and really to a lot of music cultures around the world. But really, the interval of a fifth, and yeah, by the extension, the circle of fifths. Understanding that will save you a lot of time, because in understanding the circle of fifths, what you understand is the way one chord moves to the next. Right.
Yes.
So,
you can really enhance your composition technique knowing about how that works.
Yeah, and you hear that in songs that move around the circle of fifths. You hear that sense of direction. It's not just one chord, one chord after the next. It's a flow from a beginning to an end.
Right. Indeed. So, thanks for sharing that with us. Let's see here.
That's like the most music theory we've said in the last 3 episodes.
I know, right?
But,
hey, if you guys have questions about theory, go ahead and ask them. We can bring these up in the first part of each show.
Absolutely. I love answering music theory questions.
All right, we got another new listener. These are a couple of new names that I want to start off with, Trey. And Sam Dolmage actually was an actor writer out of BC, Canada, British Columbia. He wasn't finding that outlet very satisfying, so he began a new trade as an electrician. He did, however, hang on to music. He would sing in choirs and actually was very successful at taking some solo performances and stuff like that. He also plays keys and says currently music is his only creative outlet, right?
Oh, wow.
He says that while financially music isn't doing much for him, creatively it's feeding him big time. His own words. What else does Sam have to say?
Sam says, when COVID came around, like most everyone, I started staying home. I couldn't go to any jams, but I could stay home and play and go a little deeper. I have a long commute to work, which is ideal for listening to podcasts. My 2 favorite podcasts are Music Theory 101 and Strong Songs. There's another recommendation for, 2 totally different podcasts that I love to listen to on my commute. I did find that with the jam shut down, I was playing more at home, and even just that little bit of theory study was improving my playing. I improvise a lot when I play, so I always try to test drive any new theory stuff and get it into my hands. That's interesting. Maybe good advice for Matthias, who is interested in applying theory more, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sam continues, but it works the other way too. I'll hear a melody in my head and play it on the piano and harmonize it however it feels right. And all of a sudden, something in the pitch collection changes. That was what was diatonic now has notes that don't work. And I can fumble around and see what does work and do that. For me, this has been a really fertile period for learning and playing. It hasn't included playing with other people, and that's unfortunate, but I can't do much about that. And I've really been enjoying going deeper into study and practice. The thing that I really need from music, that diving in with both hands and engaging with beauty to the limits of my chops, that doesn't depend on other people per se. Sometimes having other people around complicates things because a social dimension comes in, but that's a longer wrap. I'm truly fortunate. I'm truly fortunate that I have a day gig that is almost entirely unaffected by the pandemic. I have friends that have their whole lives flipped upside down and chewed up. I know my experience isn't typical, but there's a big upside for me in that the renewed attention to my theory and my chops let me play better and get into the zone better. And getting into the zone is the best antidepressant I know, and it's a real balm for the soul in these crazy isolated times.
Oh, nicely put. Nicely put.
Yeah, that's a real inspiring response. I feel like on a lot of levels. It's inspiring to hear him, to hear how Sam is taking this opportunity to sort of focus on a different dimension of his music.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than sort of mourn the loss of playing with other people, he sort of decided to take this as an opportunity to focus on this other dimension, which is the personal dimension. He mentions going deeper several times, going deeper into what his music is personally. I think that's very inspiring. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Two things, because we got back into theory and application of theory and composition. And I forgot to mention that when I was doing this podcast, that was probably most of my composing I was doing, because each episode had to have an original composition, it was bumper music. And I would often actually use the theory we were talking about to compose these little pieces, these little bumper tracks. Yeah. So it kind of worked in the opposite way for me, because I had a plan. I had okay, I know what I'm going to do. I got to do something with an augmented 6 chord here, because we're doing an episode on augmented 6 chords. And now I had 3 days to compose and track and finish this bumper music. So in that way, the theory would inform my composition. I still had fun with it. I still had a great time doing it. But now that these everything's slowed down a bit, and we haven't been doing as much of these episodes, that's kind of fallen away. And the other thing I was going to mention was, this is the second time we've heard about the Strong Songs podcast, and I actually looked it up. This podcast actually breaks down popular tunes and kind of explains the theory behind what's going on, like in the main parts of some of these tunes. So that's a really cool and fun and helpful thing to do.
Yeah. I love how some of these. Sorry to interrupt, but I love how these letters have sort of opened up this philosophical question of applying music theory to musical playing. Sam mentions, we play some things and now these notes don't work, right? And so what do you do with those? And Matthias is asking the question directly: how do I take and apply it to? And it strikes me as an interesting question. Because music is, in my mind, music theory is a description of what happened musically.
Yes.
Right.
It's explaining what you, kind of almost the science behind what you heard.
Yes, right. It is describing the phenomenon that was observed, sort of, right? Not just what happened, but why did it happen?
Yeah.
And what was the effect of that? I have long been a firm denier of the notion that theory is a whole big set of rules. And anybody, people who listen to this podcast a lot know my opinion about this, right? Music theory is not a set of rules.
Right.
I say, this is the chord you have to play now. This is the note you have to play now. This is how this has to be structured. That is not what music does. You write music, and then music theory, is the explanation of what happened.
Absolutely.
So when people say, well, those notes don't work, it's like, it makes me think, well, could I make those notes work? If you just, belligerently play those notes, could someone with enough music theory chops, come in and say, well, no, look, those are a this and a that and a this other thing, because that's what music theory is doing, is describing what happened, right? There's not, but then again, so it depends on, does it not work in terms of a set of rules, or did it not it was not what you wanted to sound like, because both of those answers to that question are worth exploring.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work because it broke some kind of rules, then you have to ask yourself, well, are they your personal rules?
Yeah.
And in which case, okay, maybe they don't work. Or are they, what you feel of is the rules because of music theory, in which case don't worry about it. You know, in the other sense, you know, does it not work because it's not what you thought sounded the way you wanted to sound?
Mhm.
And this is how music theory actually helps you, because it's like, if you think, well, if all right, that's not how I wanted it to sound. So then you ask yourself, well, how do I want it to sound? And does music theory, what theory concepts might help me get there, right?
Mhm.
You know, do I want it to sound less? Does it sound too diatonic? You know, do I not like how diatonic it sounds? Well,
Yeah.
what are some things that might make it less diatonic? You know, and throw some 5 of 5s or 7 of 5s in there. You know, some Neapolitan 6 chords or something. You know, maybe all we need is to make some of these chords 7 chords that were triads before. You know,
Right.
borrow chord if it sounds too diatonic. You know, if it what else does it sound to circle of fifths like?
Haha, right.
You know,
Canon in D, for
we can
example.
which is just a circle of fifths.
It's
right?
it's so beautiful, but it's circle of fifths all the way around.
Is the circle of fifths. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's totally the circle. So you know, so does it sound too much like that? You know, we've talked about, you know, neo-Riemannian analysis and the thirds, you know, and things like that as substitutions.
Mediants.
Yeah, the chromatic mediants and you know, and we've talked about them as ways to not just go around the circle of fifths, as ways to you know, move in other ways. So, you know, this is how, you know, you ask, how do I apply this theory? Well, I guess, if you know, one way to do that is to, when you come across that where it doesn't sound right, or you don't know what it wanted to sound like, think about, you know, well, what is it that I'm trying to do here, and what can help me do that, you know, or what do I not like about this, and what might I like better, theory wise, you know. It's an interesting discussion that's coming up with a lot of this stuff,
I know.
and unexpected, but fascinating
Absolutely.
point of digression.
And speaking in digressions and fun facts, because we have lots of them in this episode, I've noticed that one thing I'm doing more now is actually paying more attention. Like, we got a new set of songs we're going to work on for this other band. I know Colin's going to have the chords when I get there. He's going to have the charts when I get there, so I'm not worried about it. But on the way, I listen to the songs on my little playlist, and as I'm doing this, I'm actually saying, okay, this is 1, this is 4, this is 5. And actually in my head, getting the patterns down to where now these songs, I actually have the diatonic patterns in my head, rather than this goes from A to B to C. I'm like 1 to 2 to 3. And I think that's actually been a great thing, because now my only problem is I'm always like, hey, what key is this next one in? Because I already know it.
Because you don't remember.
No, yeah, but hey, we digress, right?
But we digress, yeah. So how do you feel that that's helped you to
Enormously. I mean, I've been doing it all my life, right? But for some reason, there seems to have been a quickening. I don't know why or how, but recently there seems to have been a quickening in that
well,
world.
you know, it's like I was saying before, you know, play and learn music theory, and eventually they'll come together in your brain.
Totally. And that's happening. It happens all the time. But I did notice kind of a jump up recently. Yeah. So that's encouraging.
Absolutely.
Let's move on, shall we? We have another listener. Our new friend, Stephen Irwin.
New friend, Stephen Irwin.
From Phoenix, Arizona, who we recently met on Music Student 101 Facebook group with an exclamation point.
Check that out. It's great.
Yes, sir. What does Stephen have to say? How has this affected him?
Stephen Irwin says, all the insanity lately presents a good opportunity to get your priorities straight. One thing I realized near the start of the pandemic was that I wasted a lot of time arguing with people on social media, and it didn't do much for me besides make me feel ill mentally and emotionally. I am with you, Stephen. I am with you. And you know, I have spent too much time on that myself. Like you, it just made me feel worse about everything. It just in general, you know. It gets to the point of like, why do I even keep looking at this thing? You know?
It's like driving past a car crash. You know, it's just we for some reason are attracted to drama and ridiculousness. Apparently,
I suppose
I've been guilty of this too. And there's been times where I've realized hours of the day have been spent with me arguing back and forth with someone who's not going to change my opinion, and I'm not going to change their opinion, right?
So why are we doing? Yeah.
Oh, and I'm sorry. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah,
He's got a very good point. That's all that to
he's
say.
got a very good point. Yeah, I actually for Lent last year, I actually deleted my Facebook app.
Oh, did you really?
Yes, I did.
Oh, good for you. But you brought it back.
After Lent, I reinstalled it, but I still don't spend nearly as much time on it as I did before that. And
You're not
I
as
feel like it's a.
I feel like I'm more political than you are. You might be just as political, but I'm kind of a little more vocal about it, and I often immediately regret being like that. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So we agree with Steven on this much. He continues. Now I'm spending all that time learning music instead. Much better.
Yeah, right?
5 years from now, I'm not going to look back on that time. I want an argument on Twitter. I'm going to be grateful for my ability to enrich people's lives with beautiful music. All because I decided to put in the hours to practice. I hardly even know what's going on politically because I'm too busy making music, and I'm much happier that way. And I think we could all learn a great deal from Steven's example.
That is a prime success story. And it was just as simple as not flying to the little red circle with a number in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, those things are designed to attract our attention, and over and over and over and over again. So it takes mental effort, but I think Steven's onto something here. I think we'd all be a little bit happier. If we devoted some more of that time to things that we enjoy, like making music.
Maybe some of that'll go away after the election here in America, but we'll see. I don't know.
We'll see.
I'll probably put it down for a good bit after that anyways. So those are some cool new listeners. Then we have a couple of short little things from some people we already know.
Yes.
Our friend, like I said, we met Stephen Irwin on the Music Studio 101 Facebook group. Thanks again, Stephen. Our friend Taylor Handleton runs that group out of Maryland.
Right.
And what does he have to say? What's been going on with him?
So Taylor says, a couple of weeks into quarantine, I was bored as hell and decided I didn't really have any excuses not to start making music. Got a DAW, a DAW, that is a digital audio workstation for the curious. So it, Pro Tools falls in this category, FL Studio, stuff like that. I got a DAW and MIDI controller and started making songs, and it's been super rewarding. Realized a couple of days ago how far I've come since like March. Feels good. That's awesome.
Yeah, right? We'd like to hear what you come up with, Taylor, when you get it done.
Yeah, we can nerd out on your software at some point.
And your compositions.
And your compositions. I'm curious about all of this stuff. We want to know more.
Yeah, right. And then another listener who we've met before, also, I should say, a Patreon patron. Oh, Taylor Handleton, also a Patreon patron. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you, Taylor.
Jessica Brophy, another Patreon patron who we met a while ago. One of the most talented artists I've ever seen.
Indeed.
The ability to capture your little fur babies. So true. On oil canvas.
She takes what you love and makes it into art.
That's exactly what she says.
I remember that byline because that was the coolest byline I've ever heard.
Isn't it? Yeah.
So yeah, definitely check her out. But Jessica writes, the government mandates in my state have allowed me to have more time to practice music and learn more songs on my guitar. I've even started writing songs again. I'm thankful for that. So that's great.
Very nice.
I always love to hear that. I'm not sure what state Jessica's in.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Montana.
Montana. Okay. Yeah.
And Alabama's doing a mandate too. So states they're trying to take it pretty seriously on their own. But anyways.
Yeah. Well, it's been a little patchwork, but yeah, it's always great to hear somebody be inspired again to write again. I want to hear some of these songs that all you all are writing while in COVID. Maybe we'll have a COVID inspired listener compositions episode at some point.
Yeah, right.
What I wrote in COVID. That would be
the COVID compositions.
The COVID compositions.
There we go, man. It's on, dude.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we get into some of these articles, I have one more person here. This is real short and sweet from our friend David Ammerman out of another Patreon patron out of Washington. And what does David have to say?
David says, except for not being able to see live music in bars, not much has changed in my life. Been a good year.
That's pretty straightforward. I think
that's almost my favorite. I don't know. That's definitely one of my favorite ones, though.
Short and sweet,
like,
to the point.
Sweet, yeah. Can't see live music anymore. Otherwise,
hey man, really, that's my main problem too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Except I can't play live music either, so that's double down. But I just recently was able to get David his mug out, and he sent me back a cool little mug shot. I love it when listeners send back pictures of them with their mugs.
Yeah,
it's such a cool thing. So thanks for that, David. Looking sexy. Also a bass player.
Have we mentioned before that we're
Nope.
bass players? Yeah, I don't recall doing that.
I'm pretty sure we haven't. So
yeah,
you learn something new every day, don't you guys?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. So we have heard how we and our listeners have been dealing with this these difficult times, as we say, and I was able to find a couple of cool little articles that can talk a little bit more about this. Shall we get into it, Matt?
Let's do.
Okay, so the first article I found was The Link Between Hardship and Creative Expression by Eleanor Haley. And this was on whatsyourgrief.com. That's kind of a cool name. This article kind of points out the term sublimation.
Right.
This is a defense mechanism was detailed by Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory. Freud considered this to be a sign of maturity and civilization. According to the author, sublimation occurs when a person channels their unpleasant emotions, urges, and anxieties in socially acceptable, positive, and beneficial ways, right? So she might have lightened up the tone a bit because according to Encyclopedia Britannica, which is a bit more in step with Freud's definition, sublimation is the diversion or deflection of instinctual drives, usually sexual ones, into non-instinctual channels. Now, I mean, if you ask Freud, everything is about the pee-pee, the hoo-ha, and the whatnots, right?
That was his thing, yeah.
Maybe that's an oversimplification coming from a psychology minor, but I think I paid more attention to music back then. But anyways, psychoanalytic theory holds that the energy invested in sexual impulses can be shifted to the pursuit of more acceptable and even socially valuable achievements such as artistic or scientific endeavors.
And this is something Freud considered a good thing.
Yes, and obviously this is not what we're talking about today, right? We're actually talking about the transference of grief and negative emotions to positive outlets and so forth.
Yeah, we'll leave the listeners to form their own opinions on Freud.
I have my own.
Everyone does.
But anyways, the author of this article cites 3 key reasons that creative outlets can help people cope with grief. One of them is creative expression is engaging, okay? Psychologist Martin Siegelman suggests engagement to be one of the 5 core elements in psychological well-being. The other 4 being positive emotion, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. But this refers to participating in activities that one finds exciting, enjoyable, and challenging, kind of like year training to me, you know? These activities can be old ones or new ones, you know? Number 2, creativity can lead to creative problem solving. So when people are dealing with grief or hardships, they sometimes feel boxed in by their own perceived limitations. It stands to reason that a certain amount of powerlessness can result from times of hardship, as they often come from events that are beyond our control, you know? When people do this, creative thinking can be key to making new connections, identifying coping skills, and finding new solutions and making meaning out of their experiences.
Yeah, fascinating.
All right. And then finally, we have one that they point out that creativity fosters communication and connection.
Right.
So creative expression can allow people to convey emotions or messages that they may otherwise have difficulty getting across, you know?
Absolutely. Well, that's kind of the point of creative endeavors. to a certain extent, in my mind, is to express what is not easily simply communicated via, everyday language.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, and though creating art is often a solo endeavor, people do often collaborate, like in my studio. And they also share their work for feedback. So it takes more than one to appreciate what you're actually, doing. Mm. They can also share their art or their love of such via clubs, projects, or communities. Heck, you know what comes to mind? The Music Student 101 Facebook group.
Oh, yeah.
That's actually been going on a good bit. A lot of people have been popping in and out of that little site, sharing their stories and experiences and their compositions and their art. So
absolutely.
Sometimes people need a community for that kind of thing, and they're out there,
Yeah, indeed.
So, one other thing worth noting in this article is that it's been discovered that rates of early loss of parents has been linked to a high number of successful creative individuals. Isn't that interesting?
It is.
Researchers think that these circumstances can lead to social isolation, feelings of rejection, and that they view themselves differently from their peers,
Right.
If all your friends have parents and you get to see them interacting with them and stuff, you kind of feel isolated from that crew. But these feelings may enhance a person's ability to think outside the box or to view the world differently from their peers. So that's kind of an interesting little note.
Yeah, it is. Never thought about it.
It's almost like the universe has a way of balancing things out. But I won't get into all that. Because I don't know much about the universe. It's a big thing. Okay. So we got another article here. That was, if you want to find out more about, if you want to read the article, that's, I'll put the link up on the website, musicstudent101.com. Go to this episode 92, Creativity During Difficult Times, and you'll see the notes and the links. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes.
So this next article I ran into was called Adversity in the Creative Mind, How We Find Pathways Through the Impossible.
Okay.
This is from Marilyn Price Mitchell, PhD. And this article was in Psychology Today. So the author notes that by the time we reach adolescence, we've kind of become pretty familiar with suffering, and whether be it by their own suffering or by our friends and family.
Right, yeah.
We've witnessed how different people handle these situations differently. And we've also witnessed adversity bringing on some devastating outcomes such as drug and alcohol addiction, hopelessness, and even suicide, right? But we've also seen people hit by very hard life circumstances and come out on top and turn it around to something positive or start a new chapter in their life or whatever. You know what I mean? But by the time we're all in midlife, our responses to adversity has become a bit more ingrained in us. We kind of know how we're going to respond to adversity based on our own track records.
Yeah.
If we know we'll come out on top or sink, we kind of know whether or not we're the type of person that's going to come out on top or sink deeper into the throes of depression, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I think for a while it was thought that people are just that way, one way or the other. But thanks to the discovery of neuroplasticity, we're learning that the brain can actually recarve neural pathways.
It can restructure itself a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that kind of tracks with sort of just how the brain works in general, right? I mean, we know this from, you mentioned reading This Is Your Brain on Music, and it talks about some of this stuff. We know that the brain can be taught that in general, the music you decide you like in your adolescence is the music that sticks with you the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But that you can teach yourself to like new things, and get out of those pathways. So yeah, I think this it seems consistent with what I understand of the way the human brain works.
Right. So now that we know this about the brain, what are some recommended ways to transform these negative feelings into something beautiful and fulfilling for you and others? I found an article called How to Turn Sadness into Creativity by Jenny Marshall at lifehack.org.
Fascinating.
And Matt, if you want to, you can just go ahead and prattle these out. I think they're in a particular order.
Yeah, okay. So these are, I guess you would call they sort of suggestions. Necessary, or just some things to think about, when you feel like you've sort of been sort of lost in the dark forest a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So number one, identify your negative emotions. This is the first step. You must identify these emotions, acknowledge them, and accept them for what they are. If these feelings linger or return on a regular basis, it might be a good time to try and channel that energy into a creative outlet.
So maybe if you just had a crappy day because your boss gave you grief or something like that.
Maybe that's not a big deal.
It's not as big a deal. You'll wake up the next day and be okay for the most part.
Yeah, you don't have to write a song about how my internet went down and it pissed me off, right? I mean, that's kind of, that, yeah. So it is the deeper things that come up over and over again that maybe bear the most fruit.
Now, a lot of people can relate to their internet going out on them and their bosses giving them grief.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But you kind of sound like a crybaby when you write a whole song about that.
When you write a whole song about it, yeah. Number two, direct your negative emotions at problems, not people.
Mm-hmm.
This is all about directing your negative emotions, frustration, sadness, anxiety, depression, towards creation, rather than towards innocent bystanders, which, I guess we're all guilty of this, but I certainly am. I can be a little less forgiving of the quirks and idiosyncrasies of the people around me when I'm not in a good emotional place, right? I know that happens to me. I know it does.
Absolutely.
So, and we could all be a little better about channeling those towards something other than those people who don't deserve to be treated differently, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And number three, don't judge yourself. I feel like this is an important one.
I think this should be number one.
Yeah, I think it needs to be number one. Yeah. Creativity seems to not work so well when we are constantly criticizing our own work.
Mm-hmm.
When we are experiencing negativity, this occurs more regularly. Just remember that creativity is a process that involves inspiration and works best when untethered by self-evaluation and over-analysis. Yeah. If I would addend to that, I feel like there is kind of good self-criticism and bad self-criticism when you're creating, right? I don't, in my experience, it's not necessarily productive to avoid self-criticism altogether. What you come out with is something that's maybe not as good as it could be that you think is better than it is.
Well, you can't think everything you do is gold.
Right.
You're just fooling yourself.
Yeah, but to the point at hand here. So there's good self-criticism. This doesn't sound exactly like I want. This could flow better. This is not cutting the mustard in a way that is something that I can improve upon. Versus probably the negativity that you really genuinely should try to avoid. This is crap.
I'm crap.
I am crap. I'm a crap composer. I'm a crap songwriter. It's like I'm not as good as other people trying to do this. I should just stop. This is probably the stuff that you're not. These are thoughts that are not particularly helpful to you, right? So there's criticism and there's criticism, right? And there's a type of self-criticism that is essential to creating good art, and then there's a type that is really standing in your way.
So keep yourself in check, just don't beat yourself up.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe
walking that middle line. Yeah.
And that's kind of a process too, learning how to do that right.
Yeah.
Or in constructive ways.
Yeah. It's a lifelong process, and we are none of us perfect at it.
Well, again, that was suggestions, and there's a good article along with these by Jenny Marshall on lifehack.org, How to Turn Sadness into Creativity.
Excellent.
So 3 cool little ideas, and I think the important thing to remember is that while creative activities don't get rid of these emotions, they do trigger the fulfillment centers of the brain, right?
Right.
This can lead to the discovering of new emotions as well as channeling this energy to more positive places. And I think it's worth noting that also recent studies show that engaging in creative activities can also increase levels of dopamine and serotonin, both neurotransmitters associated with well-being and happiness.
Right.
In the brain.
Yeah.
So there you go. This is kind of what I've been digging up about what's been going on with me lately, and I can tell all of other fellow musicians too.
Yeah, this has all been very cathartic.
But we were talking about this earlier, Matt, how it's kind of funny how we both had such sob stories, and most of the people that wrote in actually have some pretty...
are doing much better than us.
very positive people, and we applaud you.
Absolutely.
You guys.
Make me feel better.
So again, hats off to all the people who have been able to take lemons and make lemonade, you know? I know a lot of people who are not like that and don't seem to think they have the capacity to be like that. And I do want to say that there is help out there. And if you are having really deep problems with what's been going on, or just in general, there is a suicide hotline, 1-800-273-8255. We'll also put that on the website. I also heard that in the next couple of years, there's going to be a 988 number. It's not.
Wow.
It's not in place right now, but it's actually going to be the emergency suicide hotline.
Okay.
So,
All right.
maybe those listening a few years down the road will have that at their access as well. But wow, man, I just think it's really been it's really been not. We don't want to end it with that. I think it's been a really great conversation, and I've really enjoyed. I think one of my favorite things about this is actually getting to know people from all over the world and their processes and how they handle certain things like this and the music they come up with.
Well, you know, you all really do inspire us and inspire me, you know, to keep doing what I'm doing. So, you know, I'm being a little selfish here, I guess, but it really is nice to hear from you guys all of the things you're doing, because it helps me get through this better too. So thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you guys. Know that you're helping us and inspiring us.
Yeah. And inspiring us, yeah.
So, anything else you want to say before we get back into the theory grind, my man?
Bring on the theory grind. Let's do some theory grind.
Yes, we shall. We shall. And thanks again for staying with us and for believing in us and for sharing your stories.
Indeed. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. And try to keep your creative channels open. If you find yourself overwhelmed or without hope, don't forget, there are people out there who want to help. Check out our website for some resources at musicstudent101.com.